There's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hello, BookTube. I'm Shawn, the Book Maniac. Welcome back to my channel. Today I have a very special guest, Lindy, my bookish bestie from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, who is involved in a project called The Shadow Giller, and now I'm going to welcome her to my channel, and she's going to explain what the heck that means. Welcome back, Lindy.
Hello, Shawn. The Giller Prize is Canada's foremost literary prize and the most prestigious, I guess. It pays the authors too, because the winner gets $100,000 and the authors who make the short list each get $10,000. So
how much do the bloggers on the Shadow Giller get?
Well, I'm glad that you asked. I'm participating as a shadow juror this year. So, we're trying to read all the books, as many as we can, that the jurors are reading, and then we come up with which one we think should win. It's all for fun. We don't get paid anything. Conversely, no matter how much we promote a book, the author's not going to get $100,000 on our say-so, but it's always good to celebrate Canadian writing.
The Giller Prize, it's been around for what, 30 years?
Started in 1994.
And it was a rich tycoon funded it in memory of his wife, is that right?
That's correct. Maybe you can put a link to the Giller website if people want to know more about it.
Have you always been a big follower of the Giller Prize?
Yes, in the sense that I'm always interested in the long list. And I'm like that with a lot of literary prizes, actually. I have a close look at what's on the long list and see what interests me. It's often how I hear about authors or books that I haven't heard of before. I'm less interested in which one wins. Sometimes I'm like, yay, that's one I like too. And other times it's like, I wouldn't pick that one. I'd like to say that the long list now has come out for the Giller. And normally the list is 12 books long. This year they've chosen 14.
Did they explain why?
No. And there is a time period parameter. So the books need to be published between October 2019 and September 2020. So that's the year, right to the end of September this year. So as it happens, 2 of the books that are on the long list haven't been published yet.
That often happens with the
books. Yeah, it's kind of annoying, but I don't think it makes a lot of difference for the author whose books haven't come out yet, because someone who looks at the long list, a reader like me, will say, oh, well, as soon as that comes out, I want to read that. And it's not too much longer that you have to wait. But as trying to be a shadow juror, I want to have already read it. So anyway, I've got my order in at the bookstore for when they come out. So the long list is out.
Yes.
And I had done a prior prediction. Actually, 3 of us on the shadow jury, we each did our own prediction of which 12 books would be on the list. I think we all did pretty good.
Just for people watching, in my show notes, there's going to be a link to Lindy's blog and also the other the Giller Shadow blogs, the other ones.
So yeah, 6 of my predictions were correct.
Would you like to start with those 6?
Yeah, sure. Shani Mootoo's new book, Polar Vortex.
You loved it.
Oh, yes. I mean, I love all of her books, really. This is one that really is a character-based novel, 100% character-based novel about how well you can know someone else, even if you're married to them, but even how well you know yourself. Sometimes there's secrets you keep from yourself, and those are the kinds of things that she's exploring in there. And she manages to do it with such psychological tension. When you're inside someone's head, you wouldn't think that would be such a page turner, but I found it really compelling.
I think I heard her interviewed about it on Sheila Rogers, what's it called?
The Next Chapter.
The Next
on CTV.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
can't remember where I was walking in Tokyo while I was listening to it. Yeah. I didn't care for her most famous novel that you loved. What was it?
Cereus Blooms at Night.
Cereus Blooms at Night. Didn't work for me, but I would certainly
That
try.
that one has got some magical realism elements in it. I think maybe that aspect is particularly either you like it or you don't.
That's
Yeah.
true. So how about this one? Is there any magical realism in it?
No, very high realism.
Where is she now? Where does she live?
In the Toronto area.
Oh, she's back in Canada.
Mhm,
Hadn't she
mhm.
lived in Europe for quite some time? Europe, maybe?
I think she was born in Ireland, and then her family roots are in Trinidad and Tobago.
Right.
And she's lived there at times, and then came to Canada for university and still lives here.
Oh, okay. I thought she'd been maybe in Europe too. But anyway, great. What's next?
Kai Kello, Dominoes at the Crossroads. Kai Kello is also a poet. And this year, he had a poetry collection that won the Griffin Prize. And that's Canada's biggest poetry prize. And I think this one is strong enough that it might win the Giller. No, I don't think there's ever been an author that's won both, or especially not both in 1 year.
And I see, just glancing at the webpage, that this is a short story collection.
It is. And most of the stories are in first person, but the persona changes. You know, it's not the same person throughout. It's covering African diaspora in Canada. And the style of each story really changes. Sometimes it feels like memoir. Sometimes it's more like science fiction. Sometimes it seems more like history than historical fiction. It really kind of moves in and out of these different genres. There are often ties between one story and another. So by the time I got to the end of this, it felt like a novel to me.
Huh.
You know, those kinds of collections of short stories that are novels. So not so much that it's one narrative throughout, but just the theme of Black experience in Canada. And it's fantastic. Yes.
Kay Kello, what can you tell me about him?
I don't know very much about him, except I have seen him at the Edmonton Folk Music Festival. He wasn't alone on set, so he's a musician also, and many of these stories have to do with music. Multi-talented person, obviously.
Oh.
But what he was performing was sound poetry. I think he did both vocal and sax of the sounds of a conversation, of people having a conversation, but done with voice or sax. Very interesting guy. And I think he lives in Montreal.
Very interesting.
Another short story collection that I predicted, and it is on the list, is How to Pronounce Knife.
And how to pronounce the author's name, Lindy?
Suvankam Thamavongsa.
Good. Say it one more time, just because the reception went a little wonky there.
Suvankam Thamavongsa.
Very good. And the most surprising thing for me about its inclusion is I had no idea that the author had any connection to Canada, so I certainly was aware of the book.
Yeah, so she's from Laos originally.
Oh, really? Okay. I was assuming Thailand. The names sounded very Thai to me, but obviously there must be
Yeah,
a linguistic connection.
there's a number of different ethnic groups in Laos, and I actually don't know what her background is.
But she lives in Canada. She is a Canadian writer. I didn't know that.
She was born in a Lao refugee camp in Thailand,
Oh, wow.
and then came to Canada as a child and grew up in Toronto. You know, there's the question about which authors qualify. And so if they're born in Canada or are living in Canada as, I think, landed immigrants, somebody could have, say, dual passports, like Emily St. John Mandel. And one of her novels is on the long list. It's The Glass Hotel. You know that she was the one who wrote Station 11. And I think she's lived in New York for a long time, but she still has a Canadian passport. So she qualifies as a Canadian author.
The most extreme example that I know is,
Eleanor Catton.
no, I don't know about
She,
her story.
Catton, she was born in Canada, but as a child, her family moved to New Zealand, and she's lived there the rest of her life.
Okay, no, I didn't know that she was born in Canada.
She's
So did
wise.
she get nominated for Canadian book prizes when her big book came out?
I think she did.
The one
Yeah.
I'm thinking of is that she's kind of this, she has these series of novels where the main character doesn't enter into the story, just records her impressions of what people tell her.
Oh, Rachel Cusk.
Rachel Cusk, yeah, she's always nominated, and she left Canada when she was a baby. A
Yeah.
Canadian is a Canadian is a Canadian.
Yeah. If you're a good writer, we'll take you.
Not so sure about Rachel Cusk, but moving on.
Right. Okay. Another one that I had on my list that I was really happy to see was Thomas King's Indians on Vacation. The two main characters are retired Indigenous people from Guelph, Ontario, and they're traveling in Europe. And it's just a different portrayal of contemporary indigeneity.
Fabulous idea to locate the story with those characters outside of where you would think those characters would be. That's fabulous.
Yeah. And it is so full of humor. So the wife, Mimi, is all excited about European travel. And the husband, Bird, he is like, I just want to be home with my book. He's a real pessimist. But the story has got serious issues about dealing with your inner demons. I giggled a lot as I was reading it, and then at the end I cried.
You said that, and that it's quite an accomplishment that one work of fiction can produce both of those reactions. Yes. I have not read any of his fiction yet. I have his last. It's a chunky novel, the green cover, beautiful nature scene.
On the back of the turtle?
That's it. I am reading his nonfiction, his famous nonfiction one, which is being made into a film. What is the book called? The Inconvenient Indian. That's right.
The Inconvenient Indian.
Kind of a whimsical, but not only whimsical, history of. The subtitle is A Curious Account of Native People in North America.
Yeah, excellent. And I've got another one by a First Nations author. This one's by Michelle Good, and it's called Five Little Indians.
And thanks to you, I do too.
Hey, have you read it?
No, but I hope to get to it maybe this month.
This one is historical fiction, but not too far back. I think it's maybe in the 50s. It's about 5 young people who grew up in a residential school in the northern part of Vancouver Island.
And we should say for people that aren't Canadian, a residential school is what?
So, thousands of Indigenous children were taken from their families and put into residential schools where they were forcibly prevented from using their language and from participating in any aspect of their culture. These schools were run by various churches, and it was the idea of the Canadian government that they would get rid of what they called the Indian problem by removing culture. And terrible things happened in those schools.
Pandemic of sexual abuse.
They didn't have enough food, they didn't have enough warm clothing, their education was substandard. They're basically forced to work for the upkeep of the school. And some of them didn't see their families until they were 16 and aged out of the school. And so what happened in Five Little Indians, when their girls are 16, they get a bus ticket to Vancouver, and that's it. They're on their own.
I'm assuming it's quite a moving story.
Oh, it just grabs your heart. When I first finished reading it, and much sobbing, I thought, I don't think this will be on the Giller list, but I think it's on Canada Reads. It's that kind of book that every Canadian should read. But these individuals in this book have really stayed with me. And that's why I thought, I think this writing is considered a literary book for that power alone, as well as its very important portrayal. There was a royal commission looking into the residential schools. Even the summaries, they interviewed many survivors. An important historical document for all Canadians, but I don't think very many people will read that. But this is the kind of book that I think will bring home the consequences of what happened. So the last residential school might have closed in the 70s, maybe. I'm not sure exactly. Fairly recent.
Oh, I think, yeah, later, because I remember that I had graduated high school. So I think in the 90s. There probably weren't many left after the 70s, but the last ones I think were in maybe the early 1990s, which is just obscene. So this went on for a century.
Yes, that's right. But the thing is, that trauma continues through generations. There's just so many Canadians, Indigenous Canadians, that are still affected. Yeah.
It's an unbelievable legacy of trauma, intergenerational. It's going to be a tough read, but it sounds very much like a Shawn book.
There's enough hope in there. There's good things that happen. Oh, and The Glass Hotel. That was another one that I thought would be on the list, that Emily St. John Mandel. And the reason why is it's got this fabulous kaleidoscopic kind of storytelling. It is about a Ponzi scheme, but mainly it's about how we reinvent ourselves. And also that the most important families are the families that we create.
And so you liked it. I have heard nothing but terrible reviews of it, but you are one who did like it.
Oh, no, I thought it was fantastic.
No, I haven't heard many, but everything I've heard has been negative. So.
And then there was another one that I almost put on my list, but because I had to keep it to 12, it got bumped off. Well, it turns out that if I would have had 14, this one would have been on the list. It's by Lynn Coady, Watching You Without Me.
Lynn Coady is from where? The Maritimes, right?
That's correct. Nova Scotia. So this one is a story of two sisters, and the mother has just died of cancer. And so the one sister who's been living away for 10 years comes back home because of her mother's imminent death, and also because her adult sister has cognitive and physical disabilities and has lived at home. Her mother has cared for her. And so now she has to sort out what's going to happen to her sister. And it seems pretty straightforward, except that there's this caregiver, because help has been coming in. The government provides for assistance for people like this. And there's this one guy who's been a caregiver who there's just something off about him. So, right from the beginning, because she's telling it in retrospect, I don't know what was happening with me or, why my judgment was so bad. So, it's a train wreck that's going to be happening. Her dialogue is spot on, and it's very propulsive.
Sounds fascinating.
And Lynn Coady won the Giller for Hellgoing. When was that? It might have been 2013, 2012, something like that. That was a collection of short stories. She's no stranger to the Giller list.
I have not read any of her work.
Well, this one, I think you would like this one, and also The Antagonist. I think you might like that one.
So those are the ones that you were hoping to be on the list that were. Which ones were you disappointed to see on the list?
Ridge Runner by Gil Adamson. Now, I had that one in hardcover, and I was so certain that there's no way this is going to be on the list that I've already given it away. Her writing is beautiful. She wrote Outlander about 10 years ago. Outlander is about this woman named Mary who, when she was 19, killed her abusive husband. And then that happens right at the beginning of the book, and then sets off across the Wild West of Canada. And then Ridge Runner kind of takes up where that one left off. But you don't have to have read the first one. So Mary has just died in Ridge Runner, and she's left behind a son who's about 11 or 12, and the boy's father. They live in the mountains near Banff during the time of the First World War. There aren't a lot of able-bodied men around Banff and Lake Louise, but there still are tourists coming up from the States. The historical setting is absolutely fantastic. You're just there. So for people who like historical fiction because of that immersion in the setting, 100%. I was a little bit leery about her characterization.
Okay.
A couple of people have mental illness, and I was kind of like, maybe, like I didn't find it quite believable. There's one of the important characters who's part Indigenous, and I felt like that character was kind of slotted into the stereotype of noble savage. There were little things like that that kind of niggled at me,
Sure.
but when I got to the end, I felt like, so? You know, I wanted to have some kind of deeper meaning in it. That might be my fault, that I just didn't get it.
Sounds like there were a few problematic things going on there.
Yeah, but just enough that I would say that this one should not win an award. And then the other one that I was surprised, although not as surprised, was The Pull of the Stars. That's Emma Donoghue. It's a great read. So is The Ridge Runner, actually. So The Pull of the Stars is set over 3 days. And again, First World War, but this time in Dublin. There's 3 main characters, all really interesting women, a nurse and a nurse's assistant and a doctor. And the Spanish flu is going on, and people are dying right and left. And the whole action is taking place mostly in the hospital, in a maternity ward that's just for the patients who have the flu.
Wow.
So there's birth and there's death, all of the high stakes stuff. But there was just so much about midwifery, all these details about, you know, exactly how, when this case presents this way, this is what you do. And
Info dumpy?
way too much information. But that's just me. The reason why I didn't think that it would be on the Giller list has more to do with, I felt like she fell back on some tried and true tropes to do with her plot. Just kind of cheesy. In general, I'd say it's a great read. I wouldn't have put this one on the long list.
I have not gotten along with anything Emma Donoghue has written that I've tried other than Room, which I absolutely loved. I loved Room, and that's a Marmite book. A lot of people hate it, but I loved it. And I've tried 3, 4 other books and bailed. I just don't, I've given up on her.
Yeah. She really explores motherhood in her books. You know, in Room, that woman was an amazing mother. One of her other books, the one that was set in San Francisco, Frog Music, her central character there is a burlesque dancer who, you know, her baby is a problem for her, so she just farms it out to a baby minder kind of place. So she's got the bad mother. And then in Pull of the Stars, we've got kind of a range of new mothers. There is a book on this long list that I entirely disagree with, entirely. Collection of short stories by David Bergen, and it's called Hear the Dark. I read it in an ebook format, so I don't have one to show you. It's got one novella, which is the title story, and that one it's a good novella. It's about a Mennonite girl and her faith. But the other stories, all of the short stories, there's one where it's a middle-aged guy. He learns a life lesson from a fat woman. And then the next story is a middle-aged white guy learns a life lesson from a little black boy. Oh no, that was wrong. He was a white teenager, learned a lesson from a little black boy. But then there's another middle-aged man who learns a lesson from a woman with MS in a wheelchair.
Oh, this just sounds awful.
There's a young white man.
Awful!
He learns a lesson from an Indigenous man. And then a couple of the stories are written from the viewpoint of, well, one is a Vietnamese teenager, and he's suspected in the death of an American in Vietnam. And then another one is from the viewpoint of a Honduran fisherman, and he's suspected in the death of an American tourist. The cover copy talks about how it's about how we have faith and experience grace in our lives. And okay, yeah, I can see that, but no.
Sounds like a collection of stories of how not to write your way out of your boring, straight white maleness. Oh, just making my skin crawl the way those stories sound.
No, I don't recommend that one.
Okay.
Oh. And then there was another one that when I saw it on the list, I was surprised because I had read the first half of the book and I was really enjoying it. But I thought, well, this is not going to be one that's on the list, and my time is getting short. I've got to, read as many books as possible. So I'll get back to this one later. And sure enough, it was on the list. Since then, I finished reading it. All I Ask by Eva Crocker. It's set in Newfoundland, St. John's, Newfoundland, contemporary day. And it's about 20-somethings and their complicated lives. The blurbs on it, there's one that compares her to Sally Rooney and Normal People or Conversations with Friends. I'd say maybe, but I think it's more like Zoe Whittall's writing, who's a Canadian. She wrote The Best Kind of People and Bottle Rocket Hearts and Holding Still for as Long as Possible. The genius, I think, in it is just how real these people are. Her voice is spot on. She really captures the psychology and the mood. It opens with a humdinger because the woman telling the story, Stacy, she's an aspiring actress who's just got these shit jobs and can barely make rent. So she wakes up to police at front and back doors, and they've got a warrant. So she's still in her pajamas. They're taking her computer and phone, and they say that some kind of illegal digital transmission or material is suspected at this location. She and her roommate just moved in the month before. There's the question about, have they got the right people? So she's doing without a phone, without the internet, and copes pretty well, actually. But her family, her friends, they're around her, and I feel like I know these people, All right, graphic novel, Clyde Fans.
By Seth. Seth who?
Seth. He just goes by Seth.
Isn't that precious?
And he lives in Guelph, and so does Thomas King. 2 authors from Guelph are on the list. Now, the controversial thing about this graphic novel, it's the first year that graphic novels are eligible for the Giller Prize.
They had not been eligible before.
No. Before it was novels and short story collections. So now graphic novels have been added. When I was looking at what was eligible, I disregarded this one. It's fantastic, but I disregarded it because it came out in the spring last year. So it was too soon. It wasn't published from October onwards from last year. But as it turns out, the shadow jurors didn't know this, but they had some kind of special dispensation for publishers of graphic novels that they extended the eligibility date just because they couldn't have submitted them last year. So I'm very happy that this one is on the list. His style is very graphic in the sense of lots of detail, lots of sharp black lines. And it's very character-based, and the setting is fantastic. Seth has been working on graphic novels set in a fictional town in Ontario, Northern Ontario, called Dominion. So this is one of them. It's about a family business and 2 brothers that inherit the business. Neither of them are really suited to sales, but it's the relationship between the brothers and their mother.
I will not make a big rant here because I'm not strongly attached to my opinion, but I don't think graphic novels belong on a literary prize list.
I would say some do, and this is one of them. Yeah.
I'm not overly attached to my opinion. I'm not basing it on anything other than, enjoying being curmudgeonly. I am a genre policer, definitely. And
Right.
I got quite a reaction when I made that comment on a Booker chat video the other day. So see what kind of comments I get when I mention it here. But you are more into graphic novels than I am, and I do enjoy them. I just think it's kind of an apples and oranges type of thing. So.
Well, comparing novels and short stories is apples and oranges too, isn't it?
No, it's comparing novels and short stories. No, fair enough. Yeah, fair enough. Although at least it is prose.
Yeah. Our society is becoming more and more reliant on visuals. And I think it's great that visual arts are also part of how we tell stories.
Isn't there a prize for graphic novels already?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Do they allow prose fiction on their lists? If not, why not? That's my beef. Their own damn prize. So anyway, we'll move on. What else is on the list?
There's a couple of ones that haven't been published yet.
So,
I'm really excited about both of them.
okay, what are they?
Butter Honey Pig Bread.
Oh, that one, I love the title. It sounds like Trump's IQ test.
It's by a Nigerian Canadian, Francesca Ekwuyasi.
Yeah.
I don't know what it's going to be about, but I'm excited.
I think it's going to be about butter and honey and pigs and bread. That sounds interesting.
And the other one is by Annabel Lyon, and it's called Consent. She's known for her books that are set in ancient Greece. One is The Golden Mean, and the other one is Sweet Girl. But this new one, Consent, I think it's contemporary times.
The title is brings up all kinds of social political connotations, so interesting to see what it's about. The shortlist will be announced October 5th.
Yes, that's correct.
So this video may not go up much before that, but it certainly will be up before that. And then the shortlist will be how many?
Normally it's 5 or 6.
I think they might have it a little bit more. Add an extra, the extra long list.
Yeah, I don't know.
And then when is the winner announced?
I think that's November 9th.
Well, I will not completely commit to reading the winner, but I might think about reading the winner just because it won and having a chat with you about that, but I'll have to think about it. I made an audacious challenge about the Booker, so I don't think I better not overcommit myself. Probably of the ones that you have talked about, I am obviously, this one is the one that's the most interesting to me, but you have sold me on the Thomas King, and How to Pronounce Knives sounds fantastic. The Kai Kalo, the genre bending, I'm not sure about that one. So that one I would set to one side. The Eva Crocker, I'm curious about the Lynn Coady, and not the David Berg.
No.
So this is great, Lindy. Thank you very much. All your shadow Giller. There wasn't too much shade Giller commentary in this video, so that's good.
It's been fun, Shawn. Thank you very much.